Welcome to another episode of the podcast. Today, I kind of want to do an Intuition 101 sort of episode where we're talking about the 9 different intuitive or clair abilities, because it is my core belief that we are all intuitive, every single person alive. And the way that I started working with my intuition is the way that a lot of people have experienced. It starts when you're a kid and your parents tell you ghosts aren't real, or that you're a hypochondriac because you're feeling, things in your body that, science can't explain, or, you have a grandparent pass away and all of a sudden you can smell their tobacco smoke, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so the same thing kind of happened for me. And going through that as a kid and having it dismissed or denied or ignored or invalidated, it gets frustrating. And so you kind of just start to brush it off. For me, I couldn't necessarily brush it off, at least as much as I would like to. Picking up on spirits, feeling other people's physical pain, oh gosh, just knowing that events were going to happen, or having dreams about things and then they happen in real life. Yeah. And so as I grew up, and especially around 2015, 2016, when I started going through my integrative therapy training, it really helped to find inner child healing, but also just healing in general. And it also supported me in being a practitioner and a teacher, because the more that I did the integrative therapy work, especially with clients and especially with myself, the more my intuition became so strong and so apparent. And it was also confirmed by a lot of different clients in sessions. And of course, even in readings. Thankfully, there are still times though, years and years later, where I will have something come through when I'm doing a reading for a client. I'm like, God, I hope this makes sense. This sounds crazy, or I have no idea where this is coming from. And thankfully, they get it. And so now how I use my intuition is, when I'm doing readings, connecting with spirit, connecting with the client's higher self, connecting with their past life self sometimes, connecting with their ancestors. Doing a lot of mediumship in my work, doing, helping pass messages along, but also helping people heal from traumatic deaths, or spirits heal from their traumatic deaths, helping them to cross over, clearing, so much different work with that. And then also when I'm doing a mentorship session with somebody, it's like I can see these steps that are laid out that they can take. And then of course, it doesn't matter if I'm even doing a reading or not, but intuitive guidance and insight will come through. And I ask them if they're willing to hear that. And then I'm able to actually support them from a whole other level, not just coming from my professional or expert training or perspective or anything like that. I can blend everything together. So it's really empowering. And I think that it's really, really empowering to understand how your intuition can show up for you, because you are intuitive. It's just a matter of understanding what kind of intuition you have. And once you can understand that, gaining tools and techniques and practices to strengthen that connection with yourself. Because intuition is how I make every single choice in my life. And it can lead you to wild and beautiful places, and it can guide you through the darkest moments of life, and so much. So let's get right into it. I want you to remember that everyone has different paths, and that everyone is going to have different intuitive abilities. There are going to be 9 that we talk about today. You can have one, you can have a combo of both. You can have ones that activate different ones that you have. And none are better than the other. There are just so many different ways that you can use them. So this episode is going to be a guide to kind of help you understand and connect with yours. So the intuitive abilities, I'm going to be calling them clair abilities. And I would say the most common one is clairvoyance. When I'm guiding clients in meditation, or when we're talking about how their intuition shows up for them or anything like that. They're like, yeah, I'm not intuitive because I don't have visions. And I'm like, that is not just, that's like one layer of the cake. And that's not even, visions in itself isn't necessarily all that clairvoyance or intuitive seeing is. So let's talk about this one first. So in clairvoyance or intuitive seeing, you can get visions. You can have these images or these colors or these symbols or these sort of like movies kind of play in your head. When I read Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda, he talked about how he watches his life play out like it's a movie, and almost how that's where he can make decisions from, or that's how he can see other people's perspectives from things. And I'm like, that is such intuitive seeing. That is such clairvoyance. And so if you have that, then you are, I would say you're clairvoyant. I would say there's like a 99.999% chance that you have clairvoyance. And so you can also experience flashes of light, visions, colors can be signs. Like you can maybe even see other people's auras. But at the same time, just know, like, if you don't have visions, but you have very active daydreaming abilities, or you have very vivid dreams, that is still clairvoyance. Just because you don't see people's auras doesn't mean that you're not clairvoyant too. So I also want to clarify right here and right now, I'm going to be saying that you are quote unquote clairvoyant, clairaudient, whatever. But I think that it's important to phrase it in our minds as having clairvoyance or having clairaudience, because your intuitive abilities, like, it doesn't have to be a label, and it doesn't have to be a definition or an identity for you. It's a gift, right? It's something that you have, it's something that you hold, it's something that you share with others. So yeah, I just want to add that little tidbit because I think that that's it's a very powerful paradigm shift, to really accepting intuitive abilities and to really validating them for yourself. Like, I'm not intuitive. I hear that phrase and that affirmation so much, and I just want to kind of rewrite that story for anybody who needs it. So let's get back to clairvoyance. So when people tell you about something, you can usually visualize it. Puzzles or problem solving might seem like really attractive to you because you can see how different pieces fit together, or you can see patterns, or you can even maybe see like auras or energy fields or things that aren't physically there, like whether they're in the corner of your eye or maybe they're even right in front of you, but you see them more with your mind's eye. It seems more like a daydream, or it seems more like you're imagining it, rather than seeing it with your physical eyes. But sometimes, you can still see things with your physical eyes too. So a tip for you to play around with your clairvoyance, for you to help strengthen it, for you to kind of even validate it for yourself, is through dream work, daydreaming, and visual guided meditations. So the second one is clairaudience, and this is intuitive hearing. So you can hear things that are like buzzing or ringing in your ears, or music or whispers or words that other people can't hear. You might wake up in the morning and have lyrics to a song playing in your head, and it's like those words are exactly what you needed to hear to start your day, or you needed to hear for a lot of people at the time when they are going through a big healing shift. And it just kind of helps offer confirmation or even some guidance. You might prefer to listen to things rather than read them. Music can help you in a lot of different ways, like I just mentioned, but also to connect to things like your emotions or memories or situations. One way that you can tell if you have clairaudience is that you often talk or mumble to yourself. You can hear or speak words in your mind that are so clearly apparent and maybe even prominent. And maybe sometimes they're like whispers too, but you can just tell that they're there. And you can also have imaginary conversations with others in your head, and you can hear the other people's voices very clearly too. So one way that you can play with your clairaudience is by keeping an ear open for subtle messages or signs while listening to music lyrics, but also while you're overhearing conversations. You might not necessarily be a big eavesdropper, but if you notice that you can hear a conversation happening from across the room and the words that you hear are exactly what you need in that moment, take that as a message. So the next intuitive ability that we're going to talk about is clairsentience, and that's intuitive feeling. So you might feel warmth or tingling or cold or other sensations in your body when there's no real logical reason. One that I've seen with a lot of my integrative therapy clients is feeling cold or heat in the body after a big release. And they're like, I feel like I just got to get in the tub and I have to bundle up and I just feel so cold, but it's like summer and it's like 85 degrees outside. And I'm like, okay, just let that process work through. And there are different techniques and tools and even other practices that we do, to help remedy that and everything. But that's a big one that I see a lot. You can also walk into a room and tell if it feels off. So this is more than just your typical, not necessarily empathy and not necessarily just what we typically perceive through our chakras, because that's where we are, our energy centers that are all over our body that we are just receiving and interpreting and filtering energy from, right? Clairsentience is you walk into a room and you can just tell if it feels off, or you can be blindfolded and you can walk into a room and you can just tell if you're in a birthday party or at a funeral. You prefer to experience things rather than just hear or read about them. Large crowds and busy places can feel overwhelming because you just feel so much. You can easily sense the people around you. And I think like sensing, this is that big word. And it's not necessarily a highly sensitive person. Like HSP and clairsentience are very different. And so I think that that's just really important to note. But sensing is the big clairsentient kind of indicator. And so you might like to recharge when you're alone, or kind of like to retreat into your shell a little bit and have some quiet time to process things that you go through. You might also feel emotions or sensations when you touch objects. You might go into an antique store and touch something and you just feel this overwhelming joy, and it's like a Christmas ornament. You know what I mean? Beautiful things like that. And also other experiences that are possible with that too. So one way that you can play with your clairsentience is by tuning into deeper awareness of how your body is experiencing things. So almost like somatics. How does your body feel? What's it sensing? How is it breathing? What sounds does it want to make? What movement is it called to make? And then really allowing your body to be a sort of vessel for your intuition. The next intuitive ability is claircognizance, which is intuitive knowing. You know without knowing why you know. And so answers and solutions to things you don't know about can come easily to you. Somebody might ask a question, or I don't know, you're watching Jeopardy if you're a millennial or older. I feel like, I don't know if anybody younger watches Jeopardy out there, but, and then you just have the answer pop into your mind and you're like, where did that come from? Or how did I know that? Or damn, I really retrieved that from the archives of the back of my mind from like second grade or something. You know what I mean? You know that your phone is about to ring, or you think of somebody right before they call or they text you. You have a lot of ideas and you spend a lot of time thinking. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, because everything has its polarity, overthinking can make you doubt your intuition because you're like, well, I don't know why I know this. So you go down this wormhole or this rabbit hole and you talk yourself out of these intuitive ideas or inspirations or things that you're really getting. So you might also receive like light bulb moments when you're at rest. And that's because you are balancing out this intuitive knowing, which is a feminine and a masculine. We're going energy wise, not gender here. Perspectives and traits and characteristics, right? Knowing is a lot of masculine energy, even when it's a capital K, because we're working with, the like if you picture yin and yang, how there's black in the white and white in the black, this is that feminine part of the masculine, is that claircognizance, that knowing, that intuitive knowing. And so when you're at rest, which rest is the yin and is the feminine function of our bodies, when we're at rest, we have rest and digest and ease going on in our bodies, but also with our energy and our spirituality. And so that's when intuition can come in very easily. So you might know things without knowing why you know. You might might love to learn new things. And you can just tell if something is off or someone is off or if they're lying without feeling it. You just know it. And maybe you can explain why you know. You can play with your... My goodness. Okay, here we go. You can play with your claircognizance by paying attention to the ideas and inspirations that you receive. And so just think, do you ever have thoughts that feel like you're hearing them for the first time in your mind as you think them? Big claircognizant trait. The next one is going to be clairempathy. And I'm going to do the next episode on empathy because it deserves its own entire thing. There are 11 different empathic abilities. And so when we're working with our clairempathy, this is an intuitive form of empathy. I'm going to take a drink real quick. And so clairempathy is this intuitive feeling of other energies, sensations, emotions. And so empaths in general can really feel really deeply within their energy things that might not be theirs. So some types of empathy, just for example, just real quick, animals, plants, emotions, the body, environment, thoughts. And so, like I mentioned, for me, I can really feel in my body what's happening in somebody else's body. And I think that it's really, 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 really important to note that empaths generally have a more openly woven energy field, which means that other energies, sensations, emotions, etc., are able to trick into their experiences more easily. So with this, I want anybody listening, if you feel like you have clairempathy, know that you have the free will to turn it on and to turn it off. That is the number one thing. Like choosing to feel or pick up on something and choosing to not receive that is so big. It's having the awareness and the opportunity to have those boundaries. And so one of the big things, like a quick tip that I can share here, is the phrase that one of my integrative therapy teachers taught me years ago, which is return to sender. And if you follow Elise, I can't remember if it's Meyer or Myers on Instagram, she has this phrase, which I love, and it is, I do not receive that. And so you can just say that phrase, I do not receive this. If you are in a moment where you're discerning, it's not going to be helpful for me, it's not going to be helpful for anybody here for me to be picking up on this stuff. So I don't need to, I don't want to. It's as simple as that, realizing that you have full autonomy over what you pick up on and how much you feel and receive. And so another sort of clairempathy tip is to really play with how your empathy shows up for you and notice when it's happening and not taking it so seriously, but coming at it from a more curious perspective. You know, well, yeah, I'm just going to have to do an entire episode on empathy because I can keep going with this. But I'm going to move on to the next one, which is clairalience or intuitive smelling. So you might smell things like tobacco or perfume or something like that when there's no reason to be smelling that. Those are the most common things. If, say, essential oils, like you're really feeling called to work with essential oils, or you love diffusing them, or you love keeping like flowers around you, this can be really helpful for your clairalience because not only are you getting that aromatherapy, not only is it filtering and working with the energy around you, which is going to be helpful for any other intuitive abilities that you might have, but it's also connecting your intuitive ability with things that come from the earth, which are very, very grounding and very helpful. Because when you combine, burp confirmation for somebody, when you combine a more upper chakra experience like intuition with a more grounded experience like connecting with things that come from the earth, you're creating the most potent point of view, the most potent formula, I guess you could say, and composition of energies to work with to really operate from. So it's really beautiful. So that's even my tip for you. Like if you are clairalient, then work with essential oils or work with flowers or herbs or anything that you really feel called to. And just pay attention to how and when you smell certain things. Like maybe you smell roses when you're inside and there's clearly no possibility to smell roses, but that immediately makes you think of an ancestor, like a grandmother or something. It's such a such a uncommon, not necessarily uncommon to have, but to hear about, because people can think that it's weird. But I swear, the people that I've worked with that have clairalience, it shows up in really beautiful ways. And it's like a lot of times a confirmation trait to really validate other forms of intuition that they have or other intuitive abilities that they have. The next one is clairtangency, and this is intuitive touch. So this ability often blends with other intuitive abilities. And I feel like the biggest example that I can give is when clairtangency first showed up for me. And that was when I was in college and I walked into an antique shop and there was this really, really beautiful and intricately sewn wedding dress. And you could tell it was from like the 1920s or something. And so I was touching the sleeve, and once I got down to the cuff, I automatically saw the bride's hand. And then I looked up and I was like looking right at the bride. And then we started talking and a whole bunch of other stuff. But it all happened because I touched that. And so the clairtangency worked with my clairvoyance and with my clairaudience on seeing and talking with that being or that spirit. And so you can touch an object and you can just kind of feel or sense or see or know who owned it or the experiences that were had with it or kind of what emotions, kind of like a little bit of clairsentience coming in here, like what emotions were felt about it or where it's been or anything like that. And so one way that you can work with clairtangency is by going to an antique store or going to a museum or something like that, and just touching the different objects, carefully, or if you're even allowed to, or even going into a crystal store and touching and seeing if you have a physical sensation, like a vibration in your hand, or you can just kind of feel like maybe it has come from a certain region in the world or anything like that. And I do have a tip for those with clairtangency. And I think that it's a really important one because it can help cleanse the energy and sort of like seal the experience and kind of move on from it, is to run your hands under cold water to kind of release any energy that you have picked up from. Yeah, really, really beautiful one, especially when it helps you see what other intuitive abilities you have from. Sorry, guys. If you don't know, I have brain damage, and when I get really tired, I start to trip over my words, and that's what's happening. So hang in there with me. We have 2 more to go. The next one is clairgustance, and that's intuitive taste. Kind of like intuitive smelling. It's a little weird, right? But you can actually taste things by just having them described to you. You can really taste flavor profiles and things. I swear the people who do wine tasting or any sort of alcohol tasting, and they're like, I can feel the chocolateness from chili. I don't even know if chocolate or cacao can even grow in Chile, but they can tell what region it came from. They can maybe even see the sunshine and the plants, like the grapevine or something like that when they sip. If you can really pick up on all the different flavor profiles and things that you eat or drink or consume, you probably have clairgustance. And so, like I said, it might also work with other intuitive abilities, right? Like the clairvoyance, like seeing the grapevine or something like that. So really just playing around with also really realizing if any sort of emotions or memories or feelings of past, present, maybe even future come up while you are experiencing your clairgustance. The one way that you can play around with it is noticing when you have different random tastes in your mouth. I feel like a lot of people can tell if they are pregnant or if they're about to get sick or something like that because they get a weird taste in their mouth and they just don't know where it's coming from. And I feel like that's clairgustance coming in here. You might also want to play around with this with like a chocolate tasting or a wine tasting or something like that. The last one that I'm going to talk about is clairdreaming. And this is intuitive dreaming. And a lot of people pile this in right with clairvoyance. And while that could be easily done, clairdreaming is its own category as well. Because maybe you don't actually see while you dream. Maybe it's more emotional. Maybe it's more intellectual, like claircognizance. So when you're clairdreaming, or when you're experiencing your clairdreaming, it's a really powerful way for your intuition to talk to you, because what's actually happening is that you're receiving real events subconsciously. Clairdreaming, a lot of people who have clairdreaming actually do a lot of soul work in dream work. So they can remember going to different places around the world or even different worlds and working. They can remember having meetings with their higher selves. Everyone has the ability to get messages from dreams, but some are just more naturally attuned to receiving energy messages this way. So you might remember your dreams. You might wake up and you just have these thoughts or these emotions of having these different breakthroughs or anything like that through your dreams. Another burp confirmation is coming up here for somebody. But people who have clairdreaming as one of their intuitive abilities will often remember their dreams and the messages that they were given. You might also be able to talk to your guides or your support team during these dreams. And sort of like a deja vu or a precognitive dream is also a part of this gift. And so you can play with your clairdreaming through dream work. And I would say the biggest way that and the easiest way that you can do that is just asking your higher self to work with you on a specific intention that you have for that night. So say, higher self, like say a quick little prayer or an intention. Higher self, please help me work through this situation, or please help me understand a different aspect of my healing journey right now, or something like that. Does that make sense? So with all of this, just begin to reflect. What intuitive gifts sound most like you? We can each have anywhere from one to many. So just jot down the ones that resonate and notice how and when they show up. And begin to just ask yourself, what do you want to work on strengthening? What do you want to connect with more so that you can really support yourself on your path? And if you need more help, then let's connect and work together. I love mentoring women on empowering their intuition and connecting with it and understanding it more so that they can allow it to be the guide through all of the dark times and making those big life choices, and even all the way down to the simplest choices in our daily lives. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the show. Thank you so much for being here and sitting in this circle for our chat today. If you feel called, let me know how this impacted you by leaving a rating or review, and I'll see you next time.